Well, Howard, I feel like it's been a long time since we've done a little bit of B2B Mob. How long has it been?
Yeah. Well, our audience might not know the difference. We prepare episodes in advance, Jake, remember?
I know, but it feels
So
like
it
I
might
miss you,
feel
and there's
like
so
it
much to
feels
talk
like
about.
so much to talk about, so much has happened. Um, in in our lives personally and at work. I'm gonna put you on the spot, and you can say, "Don't talk about that, Howard," but
Well,
only if you
I
want to.
want to I want to talk about something that's really catching my attention. Like there's so many things. We may have missiles overhead, we may be in bunkers, we may be building businesses, but one of the things that these businesses all rely upon is strong talent. And in the go-to-market team, there's an
Yeah.
unsung hero who converts all that tech talent to actually,
Well,
relevant
now there's
messaging.
more. You're unsung. I think there's more songs, right? Like we've
Well, they
heard from
are
a
getting more
few of our
attention.
guests. I think from a few of our guests, we've heard this come up, like this specific function in go to
Right.
market is now I would say in the spotlight.
So I think that that's why we think it's very important to bring it on early in our series here. So I have an old, long-standing friend who's been doing, A-class product marketing for a long time, Shoshana Kordova. I've asked her to join, and if she would be so agreeable, I'd like to welcome Shoshana Kordova, who's got decades of product, even when it wasn't cool. She's been doing it and bringing huge value for
Always cool.
significant companies. So let's bring in Shoshana Kordova in the house to talk about how to do product marketing and how to make it valuable for the entire GTM organization.
Hey,
Shoshana in the
Shoshana, welcome.
house!
Hi guys, nice to be here.
I
So
feel like we're
exciting.
living in the same product environment here. So you got a lot going on there, and I feel like my pillow and your chair should get to know your pillow and your chair. Got a lot in common. Shoshana, did I do a fair job of saying that you've got decades of experience of telling the product story to the customer base? Is that true?
It's a little bit true. And I would say basically I started out in journalism, and only then switched to marketing after over a decade in journalism. And then like 10 years ago now, I switched into marketing. I started in content marketing and then moved to product marketing. So it's been decades, but it hasn't all been specifically in product marketing. But I would say that a lot of the skills are super transferable.
I love what you said there, and I'm going to pick up a theme because I hear a lot of the content jobs have actually had to toughen up and get deep and dirty into the funnel and become product
Yeah.
marketing. Because
That might be,
yeah,
I think that's part of it. We were saying like product marketing is coming into the spotlight, and maybe it is because the other angles, a lot of product marketers do come from a writing background, but we know with AI and top funnel marketing content writing is not necessarily what companies are looking for.
Yeah,
Shoshana, can you give us a perspective of what do real product people do?
Yeah, what is product marketing? I'll say right now, I don't know much. I don't know, I know generally product marketing. I don't know the day-to-day. I don't know the place. So please educate. We really wanna dive deep on this.
Yeah, okay. Well, the way I look at product marketing is it basically takes the product capabilities and matches it with the market needs. And that's kind of an ongoing feedback cycle because the product capabilities are always changing and the market needs are always changing. So on the one side, you have what people refer to sometimes as inbound product marketing, and that's different than inbound sales. What it's referring to is kind of the direction you're going is from the market back to the company. So the market could be a combination of customers, it could be competitors, it could be industry trends. All those things, that's kind of market intel. And you're sort of constantly figuring out what's going on there, putting out feelers, talking to customers, checking out competitors, all of that, and bringing that intel back into the company, and the output there is the insights that you get from the market, and that should feed into both the actual product development, right? Because if you're hearing that this is what customers really want from all these customer interviews you're doing, and this is like the real big need that they're having, that should feed it into the product development. It should feed into sales, because that's how they want to be talking to their prospects. They want to be talking about their needs. And it should feed into marketing, because the other components of marketing also need to be talking about that. We're all talking to the same customers. So that's kind of the inbound product marketing. And then the other side of the feedback loop is the outbound side. And that's what people tend to associate with product marketing. It's like the pretty collateral, the visible stuff, the stuff that you see. But good product marketing is those pretty assets are based on a solid foundation that comes from that invisible inbound product marketing that's bringing the insights. And that should serve as the foundation for the outbound product marketing. And that's where you have your collateral and your other deliverables that goes out to the market.
I was gonna sorry, Jake. Is it that it's more closely, because it sounds very familiar anyway in general to a marketing strategist? It's kind of, we kind of understand that as marketers, we need to speak to our customers. We heard from Nadia before. One of the key ways that she's worked in the B2C space is you got to go to your customers first, then to product, or just back to the business, like you say. But is it that the difference is that it is more closely aligned with product? Because without that product, right, you can just say, hey, we listen to our customer, we know what their needs are, we have a product, now let's twist what our product offers into a message and channel and piece of content that fits the need, right? Even in sales, they talk about, uncover the pain, uncover the need, and then deliver the value. So is it the product piece? Like, is that really the?
Well, you hit on something when you said that somebody from B2C was talking about speaking to customers, and that is something that has been more in the mentality of B2C. Unfortunately, it's kind of taking a long time to get through to B2B companies that you also need to be talking to your customers. It doesn't matter that your customers are companies. The people who buy it are still people, and you still need to talk to them, and you still need to understand their needs. And even when people do realize that theoretically, what often happens is that there's still a kind of blocker because of this, the differences between kind of the visible and the invisible sides of this product marketing feedback loop. So what happens is you often have stakeholders who were demanding the visible pieces. So they want to see the one pager, and they want to see the sales deck, and they want to see all those pretty assets. And what happens is that very often, unfortunately, the stakeholders aren't actually asking the product marketer to deliver those insights that need to be the foundation of the good deliverables. So what happens is it's product marketers kind of need to really be a little bit pushy on this and take control and say, we need to do this. And often that involves like aligning with stakeholders on the same kinds of goals. So for instance, let's say sales is begging for case studies, as is often the case. There's never enough case studies, right? So, okay, you want a case study? Great, I'm going to get you a case study.
Why does that fall to product marketing?
What?
I was saying, why does that fall typically to product marketing and not just the content manager or Marcom or general marketers, demand gen even.
Right. So that does hit on a big issue with product marketing, which is that it looks super different from company to company, and even within a company, it can look super different from quarter to quarter, from year to year. It is super important for product marketers to be talking to customers. And sometimes it's true, case studies don't always sit under product marketing, but we have to remember that the case study is the deliverable at the end. And if what's truly important is the insights from the customers that come before you even start writing up the case study. So whoever's going to write up the case study, the product marketer should very much still be involved in talking to customers, getting those customer insights from them, and then kind of planting that throughout the organization, whether it's in the product team or the sales team or the marketing team, and figuring out what's the best thing to do with it. Because sometimes it might be refining your ideal customer, right? Like that's such a huge issue for companies, for B2B companies
Yeah.
everywhere. Like, who is our ICP? What's our ideal customer profile? And sometimes you think you know it. And then as you talk to more and more customers and start to realize, hey, these are the ones that are actually the most engaged users and the ones that are most excited about the product. And then you start narrowing down and maybe focus on them, you can totally turn around your, the whole like appeal of the product to the customer, because all of a sudden you're speaking to one specific subset that when before it was kind of diffused. So like it can be so many different things that could come out of these customer insights. So it could be like ICP refinement, it can be case studies, it can be the messaging on the website, which, that may say with a product marketer, it may not. It can be sales decks, it can be so many different things, but without that underlying foundation, it's really hard to get those good quality deliverables out there to the market.
Shoshana, I'm going to just come in here, guns a flailing here. So we've been.
I think I know where this is going.
Well, we've heard a lot about revenue intelligence, so we're doing a little bit of listening, but we're listening to those people who are in our pipeline. And I kind of feel like, given that we are listening, are we talking? Where are those conversations happening? Are they happening outside the funnel? What is the playbook that we should be doing? Like, there's this framework I used to do called Job to Get Done. And I would go to non-customers, and I would not be from my company, and I would do that. But that seems like a heavy lift. Is that a one-time intervention when we have a problem? Is that an expectation that we build that on an ongoing basis? Should I be using my conversation with customers, with prospects, with my favorite customers, with my tell me we're doing a lot of listening to calls, but I don't think we're talking, we don't have a discussion, and we are always guiding people to sales. So it sounds like the listening that we heard with Nadia was a little bit different, was a little bit open. Here, most of the listening that's happening on the marketing side and on the sales side is guided, directive, pain point exploration towards a pitch deck.
I think that. So, I hear that too, Jake. But actually, Shoshana, correct me. I think earlier on you hit on something that I think might be more key to product marketing, and that is that it might be just closer to product, and it's like a bridge in between, right? A product and R&D, they can work in their own bubble, and then it goes, okay, we have this, now go ahead and marketing and sales, do your thing. But if, from what I hear about what I've kind of maybe always assumed, is that product marketing, right, speaks to develops the ICP, develops the customer, listens to their need, and then bring it back to the product and make sure that even from early days, and I think this might be the flip, is why I think there's now this like demand to hire product marketers, is that the product needs to be influenced from the ground up from the customers. I know that at Lytico that we listen all the time to our customers, and any recent innovation was driven by listening to what the customers are saying and hearing their feedback instead of going to market, right? This GTM, we're going to market with something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ideally, product marketing should definitely be coming in at an earlier stage than kind of the rest of marketing, and should be informing the product roadmap. I would say that's unfortunately not always the case, again, because of this overemphasis on that like above the surface outbound side of product marketing. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's the ideal state. I think the ideal state is that we're taking those insights into product and we're influencing the roadmap for sure.
So who do product marketers report to?
So the Product Marketing Alliance does like a survey, I think once a year, and I think they found that it's mostly marketing, but some products. So that's the main split. There was another survey conducted by Jason Oakley, who's a product marketer, and he found an increasing number of product marketers reporting directly to the CEO.
Right.
But
Interesting.
I would say I've mostly seen people reporting directly into marketing. And in most of the places I've worked, I have reported into marketing. But I did have one company where I reported into product. And I do think that's probably going to influence how much of an inbound product marketer versus an outbound product marketer
Right.
you're going to end up being. But ideally, I think it's important for product marketing to really have their hands on both sides.
Well, can you explain to me though, is this person doing their own independent work against the ICP, or are they going to join part of the funnel and have separate conversations? What's the realistic move for them? Their own job to get done, their own prospecting in order to learn, and how representative are those true learnings versus hijacking and co-piloting some of those other funnel activities?
Yeah, so I strongly recommend that product marketers have their own calls with customers. The sales calls, whether they're on the sales call in real time or they're listening to a Gong recording or some other tool, those sales calls can definitely be helpful, and I see them as a very good supplementary source of customer input. But a sales call, as you both know, is very different from a different type of call, right?
Yeah.
Because a product marketer is not trying to sell them anything. That's a huge difference. It's like almost too obvious to say, but it's a huge difference. And the thing that a lot of people get wrong about customer interviews is they often want to focus really closely on product usage, how happy people are with the product, what they're doing with the product, that kind of thing. And that's certainly an element of it, and it's something that you want to touch on. But ultimately, what you really want to understand is the customer life cycle. Like before the customer even heard about your product, they were having a problem, and that's your starting point, because you want to understand what that problem was, why and how they decided that it was big enough that they wanted to do something about it in order to solve it, why their status quo wasn't enough, what they looked at in terms of other types of solutions, because this is a place where you can get really solid goals, competitive intelligence. And it's not the first thing that people think of when they think of competitive intelligence. They don't think of customer interviews necessarily, but actually it's a really great place to get at least some elements of competitive intelligence. So like, what were they even looking at? What solutions were they considering? Did they evaluate any other solutions? Because often these are people who may have used other solutions, maybe in a previous role or in their current company, or they've just last week heard a pitch and saw a demo from your biggest competitor. They have the intel. They have the fresh intel that they can tell you why they chose you and not those other guys. They can tell you what made them see this as such a big problem. What was the impact that the problem was having on their company, right? It's not just like, I couldn't do this fast enough.
That's that inbound language, right? That's that inbound language that they're feeding to the product marketer. Yeah, Jake, I think like if we send product marketers to conferences, right? But in addition to the sales and sales development, I think that's key, right? Shoshana, do you find going to conferences, something that's essential for product marketers, or companies really should take that seriously?
But it can definitely be helpful, especially if you're sort of using it as an opportunity to set up conversations on the sidelines, right? So, and that can also feed, it doesn't just have to feed product marketing, it can also feed content. Right? You have somebody with a video camera, or not, it's not even a video camera, right? It's a phone. It's just the phone that you carry around with you, right? And you start, interviewing people who come to your booth, or you have make separate meetings with them before the conference. They're going to be there. It's a really good way to start building relationships with those prospects, and that's not even right. Like before, we're talking about customers at a conference. It's probably going to be mostly prospects.
The market, right?
Yeah,
to understand
it's going to be the market. Yeah, exactly.
I want to say that I think that it's really interesting. I'm remembering one of my most effective times. So I used to work at Procter & Gamble, and everyone tells silly things about shampoo. when you are in their bathroom and you see that, oh, they have the premium shampoo and the baseline no-name shampoo, and then you ask questions, oh, when do you use that? When do you use that? It's situational, job to get done. When I'm going on a date, I use this one. If I just come back from the gym, I use this one. And it's those type of, like, I don't think a trade show necessarily reflects where people work. I think the key is ride-alongs or work-alongs.
Oh, that's interesting.
That has been way better. And I remember I was working for a financial company and terminals. I said, let's look at your screen. And I went and I said, what tabs are open? And I think that those have been way more insightful. And actually, those are in situation. That's where they were working. So luckily, we're dealing with software users for the most part. So those techniques of, it's not so hard. I need 10 minutes to hear, what are you doing all day? Where's my tab? What are those other tabs you have?
Let's do a ride along. I think it's come up also before in conversation. Let's get in person, right? If you're able to get to someone's workspace and feel and live their environment. I know there's loads of companies out there that just don't breach that barrier, and I think it's a real missed opportunity to say this is where your true users are living.
I want to tell you one quick story. So when I was working with Lydico, we went to a call center floor, and
I remember that.
Everyone was everyone was speaking, and I understood everything. And then there was a whole area which we didn't walk around, and it turns out that everyone there was speaking Spanish, and there was this like eureka of half the company is irrelevant for us because we don't have multi-language, and it was. I never before, because I was talking to someone in English, everything was in English, and we were dealing with English problems. The technology could solve everything, but we didn't notice that. So I would say that, job to get done, but the in situation was incredible. Okay, I'm rambling with those stories, and here we are. We have the guru right here. So I think we have a job to get done, in situation, ride along, call along, those type of things. How do we make that part of our everyday? We're dealing with so many things. What are some of the motions we should put into our everyday activities?
Yeah, how do you block off that time, right? Like, there are deliverables, like you said, and it might start with, hey, we need you to produce a case study, and that might fall on the product marketer's desk, but a lot of the valuable work might be in some other areas, like working directly with products instead, or like, how do you personally navigate that as a product marketer?
Yeah. So before I get to that, I do just want to address the ride-alongs. That is like an important component of UX research. I would say that it tends to fall more under product and UX research. It can certainly overlap with the kind of questions that I would ask as a product marketer, but I would say it's a little bit further in the customer journey because, again, that's the product usage part, and I need to start before they've even heard of the product. Right? Because we want to get that early part of the customer journey. That's what's crucial for us on the go-to-market side, because we want to get other people at that same stage that the customer was at when they first just had a problem that they didn't know how to solve. Right? And so we want to talk to them about when they were at that stage. And the ride along, there's tons of info that you can get from that. And, it's more focused on how are they using the product. So, we have to start from before we even get to the product. So I just wanted to...
what is there? Yeah, that right along, on the UX front, and that's like that when they're actually using product, but it's like, what are the pains? What, again, when you ask someone what are your pain points, and they're going to answer, but when you go to their office and you start hearing someone say, the interest rates are dropping, we need to do X, Y, Z, and, move this and do that, like, that's the problem. That's not necessarily what, like, the product usage. What I always find, just talking about the product, it's interesting that product managers and product and working with R&D, they call them like stories, right? Feature stories. That's their terminology. That's a marketing thing. We tell stories also. So I just thought that was
so what was the answer for what I need to do on a regular basis? Because we have
the regular basis, exactly.
I have the pressure of deliverable as a marketing head. I have multiple deliverers, and I think I know my product, and I blame other things in miscommunication. I don't blame my documentation or my understanding. So what are the interventions I need to make on a regular basis?
Okay. Well, we didn't even talk about this before we went on air, but I actually recently put out a template on how to build a customer insights program. So I will happily walk you through that.
Okay.
Please, and if you want
Basically,
to share that in the, we can share that in the show notes if it's public.
sure. Yeah, happy to. Um, Basically, I broke it down into 6 steps. Okay. So the first one we already touched on. It's like set goals that align with your stakeholders' needs. So we said maybe it's case studies, it might be ROI metrics, right? Like how does this actually help a customer? What's the impact? People kind of mistakenly think, oh, if I just ask them directly, they'll just know. But actually, like figuring out the impact of your product, that's one of many products in their tech stack, is usually not that high on your customers' list of things to do. So they often don't have that ready. But once you get into a conversation with them, you can often pull that out based on the conversation. So the first thing is just to set the goals, because we have that problem that no one's really asking for these interviews often. So what's like an output of these interviews that we can align on? And they say, yes, I want ROI metrics, or yes, I want case study, or yes, I want to refine the ICP, or yes, I want competitive intelligence. And so let's settle on that goal. And now we have the backing of our stakeholders in order to move forward with the customer interviews. So that's number one. Number two, another issue that product marketers often have is that they don't own the customer relationship, right? It's usually owned by customer success. In some companies, it might even be owned by sales. It doesn't, like, I don't own that. So you get into this whole like, oh, I don't want to step on their toes, and they own it, and territorialism, blah, blah, blah. So,
well, you know who owns the customer? The company, right? That's
okay,
how. Whenever I hear that talk, I'm always like, guys, we're on the same team, and I don't want to get into those politics. I usually try to shut that down. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah. No problem.
Just like every time that comes up of who owns something, marketing, sales, product, like it's like no, the company, and we need to figure out what the company needs. Yeah.
That's totally true, but practically.
Yeah, but the reality and the relationship, the politics of it, for sure.
So the way I've done it is it's basically a shared customer interview pipeline. Now, this can be a board on like, let's say you're using Monday or Asana or whatever, or it could be a Google Sheet, just something that like you like the product marketer and the customer relationship owner. So let's say that's customer success. So something that you and customer success both have access to. And then it's just the same way you have a sales pipeline, you have a customer interview pipeline where you go to your customer success people. They're the ones who are most informed about like which are the low-hanging fruit, the customers that love our products. They know that. They know it off the top of their heads. It's their customers. They already know it. If you're doing NPS or other surveys, you could do it based on that, who gives the highest score, but like often they'll know it off the top of their heads. So you start with the low-hanging fruit, right? You start with that. Ask them to kind of, okay, let's say each customer success manager, put down 2 or 3 people. Great, you already have a list. You don't need a million people on the list. You just need a few people to start with. And then you just kind of go from there. Like they make the first contact. So they'll either send out an email, or if they have like a weekly call or something, maybe they'll mention it on the call, and they'll just say, hey, we have a product marketer who's looking to speak to customers about how they're using the product. Is it okay if they set up a call with you? These are the most engaged customers. This is low-hanging fruit. In most cases, they're up for it. They may be scheduling, oh, I have this big thing. Okay, so it'll be a few weeks later. Okay. But
I think also default people want to be helpful, right? I think if something is low pressure and you ask for a favor of speaking to someone, right, it's like an easy thing. I think generally the default, most people will be helpful, right? Have you found that like when you're practicing and you add,
I found it's usually not going to be 100% because what is, right? But but most people will do it. So that's number one. Like the relationship owner takes that first step. Then they just send an email. They CC the product marketer. Boom. The product marketer takes it from there, sets up a time, has the interview. I personally usually CC the customer success person, like invite them as optional to the meeting so that they can
Right.
come if they want to. Usually they don't bother, but if they want to, that's great, so that they're comfortable. I'm not.
Yeah, the customer might be more open to talking when it's not their usual relationship.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sort of takes them out of their usual day-to-day grinds, because the usual call with the customer success manager, it's like joining that call. If it's kind of part of the usual call, I'm often not going to learn that much, because there's a lot of very, like, you're in the weeds, like, oh, I tried this new feature and it wasn't working and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's great for customer success. That's not what I need, though. I need something different. So basically those first two steps of setting goals that align with your stakeholders' needs and building a customer interview pipeline, that's basically just about, getting the other people on board, because product marketing is both strategic and collaborative. And if you're not collaborating with other parts of the company, I don't think you can be able to do a good job as a product marketer, because it's not a standalone. You can't be siloed. It's not going to work well.
But isn't that the challenge of, you are a politician trying to get time from people who are not necessarily seeing it as business critical to them at that moment. And so you are actually borrowing time. I find it must be a very challenging role, because you're getting technical time, which is not necessarily seen as critical to make the deadlines in the next release. You are getting sales time, which
Jake,
may or may not.
You're always pushing towards something. You don't have, maybe you have your props or you don't, but the time is money, and are these activities revenue generating activities?
Yeah, and I think that's the onus on.
That's another question, right? I want to. If I don't want to interrupt the insights, I want to get I want to get through the process, but I think it's important to also understand if this is this a revenue generating path, and how. And me and Jake, we hate the word attribution anyway, but sometimes it's the nature of budget spend and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So before we touch on revenue, I'll
let's put a pin in it for now.
Yeah.
I do want to go there, because at first I think we should keep the rest of the 6 steps for a show note thing. And I do think that this is, if someone's thinking about revenue or the whole GTM,
teaser.
It's a teaser for that. And I want to get to the brass tacks question of why, if as a GTM leader, am I going to invest another dollar in this action? When am I going to see payout? How do I argue for more of that?
Can I ask for just one more step before we go into revenue?
Of course.
Go for it. Of course.
Go for it, for sure.
Because
I want to hear, but I said let's save it. But I think Jake's right. Let's tease the playbook and the insight guide for the notes, and we'll make sure that people read it.
I'm just gonna get one more step in, because that step is pretty crucial. It's interviewing the customers.
Yeah.
And what I want to say about interviewing the customers, like we already talked about some of the things that we want to give more weight to the problem than the solution, right? We talked about that, but another thing that is super, super important, and that a lot of people don't realize about conducting the interview, is that the follow-up questions are the most important part of the interview. And what happens a lot of the time is people think like, okay, I need to prepare. Maybe I'll do it on my own. Maybe I'll ask ChatGPT. Maybe I'll, ask my colleagues, like, what questions should I ask? And now I have a list of 10 questions or 20 questions. And now my job with the interview is to go through the checklist and ask all the questions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. I asked all the questions. That's not going to give you the insights that you really want for the interview.
Yeah.
And the way to get to those, like, and this does speak to ROI, because it's not just your ROI as a company, it's also how is your product helping your customers get ROI, right? Because that then affects your ROI, because it brings in more customers. And so just to talk about one of the possible outputs, those ROI metrics that very rarely do your customers have at the at their fingertips. But when you start saying, when they say like, oh, yeah, it saves me a ton of time, that's not an ROI metric. But when you start asking follow-up questions and you say, oh, how long was it taking you to do that before? And they say, oh, we had 2 people working on it 1 day a week, every week. Well, okay, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
and
money, right? And head counts and whatever.
Yeah. And how long is it taking you now? Oh, once we onboarded, we press the button and we see it in 5 minutes. Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's real dollar. Yeah, that's the real dollar value for the customers.
Yeah.
And I think that part of product marketing is, or any market analysis and research and deep understanding, because that goes all the way up, obviously, to product, but all the way up to pricing strategy and full corporate metrics down to, that's going to influence the value, the pricing, and then ultimately even corporate forecasts and cash flow, cash burn, all of that. You can pivot to a new pricing strategy in a quarter and change the future of your company based on understanding that your product might be saving someone millions of dollars and you're only charging $5,000.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that
the same way that I worked at a company and they did this pivot before I started, so I can't take credit for it. But
sure.
They used to be a very horizontal type of company, and then they decided, okay, they realized that the people, they were kind of on the cusp of giving up, okay, and they realized that the people that were most interested and engaged with the product were people in the finance world, and finance teams, corporate finance teams, and they pivoted. And they basically completely, changed their ICP, and basically they've realized who their ICP really was. They found product market fit, and they started, completely now we're a solution for finance teams, where before they were just kind of a solution for anyone who, so that's. What's the value of that? Well, it's the value of the company continuing to exist or not, right?
I think it's a very valid point, and that's what we have to think about. That sometimes we have to. It's not just incremental value. We have to understand that there's breakthroughs, and by not listening to the boss about the value of our technology, then we grow a little bit too much of a delta, too much of a gap between them. So we have to make that part of our cadence. I think that's what we're coming to.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult. We see it's important, but we just need to carve out time to do it.
Well, now I also understand why, you, Shoshana, also personally. I know you mentioned journalism, and obviously there's an investigative component to it.
Right.
Writers are writers. Before AI was all about researching and going deep. So that now that makes sense. Well, that's a natural fit, because that person tends to be the listener, tends to ask the questions and go the next level down.
Yeah, for sure. And I think curiosity is,
of course,
is the most important skill, in both in journalism and in product marketing.
Shoshana, you have given so much of your wisdom, and I can tell that this is something that you're not only passionate about, but hot dog, you're good at. So I can't wait to get the rest of the tips and tricks, so maybe I can improve my game and all the other listeners. I wanted to thank you so much for joining. We could talk so much about product, but I feel like I have a work list to do right now to get in and do some customer interviews myself. So in the meantime, Shoshana, a huge shout out, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shoshana. I definitely have more insight into the role, into the function, into the importance. So really, thank you for shedding that light on now a hot role and growing in demand, and an important part of the full life cycle of a company, right? And it's not just marketing, it's product, but also sales, corporate strategy. Right. It all works together. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was great being here. Bye-bye.
Bye, Shoshana. So Jake, that was amazing, actually. I know we talked about who do we need to highlight, what type of go-to-market functions, kind of traditionally, I think it came up can sometimes feel siloed, but shouldn't be. I think product marketing is something that we need to hear. We need to hear those voices, more of them for sure. I know the Product Marketing Alliance, and there's a very strong role in many corporations, but in small startups that wasn't the case, right? Knowing from our own experience from the market from 10 years ago, I think there's been a real evolution. That's what
I
I'm
also think
seeing and
PLG has put more attention to product and the metrics there, but I
Mhm.
think it is that job to get it done. Every time we get a guest, I feel like I have so much to learn, which makes this podcast so much fun, Howard, that we can learn from everybody. And it's my hot dog. I got to get to work on this right now. So
Yeah.
thank you to Shoshana, and thank you to Howard. And until
Thank you,
we
Jake.
meet again.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.